Today, I would like to talk to you about nourishment and food and eating and diet and all things about what we put into our bodies. So I'm going to basically just tell you about me and my story and see if that has any interest and any impact for you. I grew up a Midwestern girl, so I would, in hindsight, say that I had a pretty standard Midwestern diet, which to me was meat and potatoes, some kind of starchy, grainy, potatoy thing. Um, Maybe a little bit of vegetables, not that much. Lots of sugar for me, lots of fats, lots of cheeses and fried foods and soda and fake sweeteners and a lot of that kind of thing. Now I'm 60 years old, and so I'm hoping the Midwestern diet has shifted from when I grew up, but that's how it was in like the 70s and maybe early 80s. So that's kind of what I ate. Yet I'm very short. I am 5'2" and a quarter. I think I might have lost that quarter as I've gotten older, but I'm short and vain. I care what I look like. And because of that, I always had to watch what I ate very carefully. So if I gain 5 pounds, you can see it. It's a whole pant size or a dress size on me. Lucky me, if I lose 5 pounds, it's the same. It plays out the same way. But if I gain 5 pounds, it's a problem. And so I always grew up kind of a little bit chunkier, certainly chunkier than I wanted to be. But, I always felt like I just had a little bit extra pudge on me, which was not my preference. So what I did then is I then proceeded to do every kind of diet that there was. I'm sure I have tried every single one of them, and some of them were actually successful. I think the first diet that I did that was more of a trendy diet was the Atkins, and that actually worked for me for maybe a year or so. So there's been some success with some of the fad diets that have come and gone throughout the years. But I would instead tend to please my tongue and let my tongue rule the world. And I would have like a candy bar for lunch. That would be my lunch. And that would satisfy me for a while. And that was kind of what I did. And lucky me, I have always moved my body a lot. I've always liked to be active and do various activities and things and sports. And so that wasn't a challenge for me. Working out, I used to be an aerobics instructor back in the day, in the Jane Fonda days. And I actually taught like 2 aerobic classes a day. But I was still chunky. I remember my boss kind of complaining to me about how fat my thighs were and how I needed to cut down on my eating. And so for me, it's never been about moving my body because that's come easy. It's always been about what I put into my body. So our family was always very focused on food. Any kind of family gathering that we had, the first thing you'd say is, okay, we're all going to get together for Thanksgiving. Who's bringing what? Like what's going to be the food that we eat? So it's just, I grew up that way. Once I had kids, I cringe now at how I fed my kids. I don't like to spend time in the kitchen. I'm a cleaner rather than a cook. So I have friends who the agreement is you cook, I'll clean, because I actually kind of like cleaning things. But cooking I find disgusting and disturbing for me even. But I did cook for my kids, but it was things like chicken fingers and potato skins. I even gave them like Pop-Tarts and just things that were, I feel very bad about. So sorry to my kids once again about what I fed them. But that's kind of how I grew up. So that was what it was all about. And it was just about the visual for me growing up. And then what started happening, I would say in my late 30s, early 40s, I started to have some problems. My body started to talk back. I think that my body wasn't so happy about what I was ingesting on a regular basis. So it started with me having some pains in my stomach. I tried all sorts of Western doctors, and everybody said I'm fine. You know, they took the standard tests on me, and I didn't have anything scary, so I was fine. And so eventually I sought out a holistic doctor. I went to her and she hooked me up to some weird machine and then declared that my gallbladder was struggling and I needed to change my diet for 2 weeks. Now, I don't have that big of a problem if somebody tells me I need to do something different for a couple of weeks. My constitution is such that I'm just, hey, I can do anything for 2 weeks. I can suffer through anything for 2 weeks. I can struggle. I can make something happen for 2 weeks. And so the 2 weeks wasn't a problem. But what she did is she had me drink a lot of water, which I kind of quickly figured out, yeah, I haven't been drinking that. I've been drinking liquids, but not water. She also had me eating a lot of vegetables. And a lot of the vegetables that she requested for me to start to put into my diet for the 2 weeks were not the types of vegetables that I had been eating. It was things like Swiss chard and spinach, which I knew was good, but I really wasn't eating that. Instead, if I had lettuce, it would be iceberg lettuce. And so it was just very nutritious, very nutrient dense types of foods. And I just jumped all over it. I went to the grocery store and hunted down all these different types of vegetables and started eating them. And, I think I was only allowed to have maybe some vinegar and oil on them. And so I did that, and I did it for 2 weeks. And I noticed just some huge changes. I had the biggest, sorry guys, but I had the biggest period I have had for maybe a decade. And my body just instantly started feeling better. Not just my stomach. I had noticed that I was having stomach pains. That's what brought me to her. But there were all these other things that started shifting that I just wasn't even on my radar. My energy level, which always has been pretty high, but it just went higher and higher. And I just, there weren't any aches and pains, and I just felt great. So I did that and got rid of the stomach pain and felt good, and slowly started to, so the 2 week diet was not something that I could just instantly do, but it inspired me to try to do better. So I started to adopt a theory of, if it tastes good, I can't have it. And if I don't like it, then that's what I should be eating. Because most of the foods that I didn't like were the ones that were good for me and healthy for me. And most of the foods that I liked were packed with like sugar and fats. Caramel wasn't on the list. I don't know what she was thinking, but it was, much more healthier foods and healthier options. So it started me to slowly shift my eating and slowly bring in more nutrient-dense foods into my diet. But apparently it wasn't fast enough of a change, because as time marched on, I then was in my maybe mid-40s, and one day, after really not ever having a headache for most of my life until my mid-40s, as I said, I think it was 2005 when this happened, I suddenly had the most searing pain in my head that I have ever had. And it literally knocked me off my feet. I literally could not speak. I could not take care of my children. I remember once I was at home, we were waiting to get an MRI because we thought I might have had a brain tumor. It was that sudden and that severe. And there was a workman that came to the house and was talking to me. And I just remember looking at him and realizing that he was speaking English. Like there was a part of my brain that knew he was speaking English and he was talking to me, but it came at me like little word bubbles just floating right back around my head. I could not comprehend what he was saying because the pain was so harsh in my head. It was just like the whole, all the cognitive skills deteriorated as well. So I found out that I did not have a brain tumor. So, as with the stomach challenges, I went to the Diamond Headache Clinic. They put me on all these Western meds, and the migraines just kept coming and coming. I would have multiple migraines in a week. And for me, it was just the pain. I did not have the aura. I did not get nauseous. I didn't have light sensitivity. So, I was technically diagnosed with abnormal or something. I can't remember the exact term that they use, but atypical. That's what it was. Atypical migraines. So that wasn't really working for me because then I was completely drugged up. So not only was I losing my cognitive abilities because of the pain, but then I would also lose them because of the medications I was taking. And then another interesting thing happened, at least from my perspective, is I kind of smelled bad. So I went to the gynecologist just for a regular checkup, and I remember mentioning to her, I said, like, my overall body has this terrible odor. I feel like I smell like kitty litter. I just walk around and smell like kitty litter. So I was showering all the time because I could smell myself. And it's kind of disgusting. So my gynecologist checked my medications and found out I was on some extremely powerful medications and asked a key question, were they working? Which they were not. And so then I worked myself pretty quickly off of those medications, but still had the pain. I mean, I had it with the pain, with the medications or not, so at least I was off the medications, but I still had the migraine pain. So I felt like I took matters into my own hands at that point and started Googling what causes migraines, what are the causes. And there's, lists upon lists upon lists on the internet, especially this is maybe 15 years ago now, of what causes migraines. And a lot of it was food related. And as I culled down the list, I kind of established, well, it could be meats, it could be dairy, it could be all these things. But if I change to a vegan diet, if I just ate, fruits and veggies and beans and lentils and nuts, if that's what I ate, then none of those seem to trigger migraines. And I am the type of person that does much better with abstinence than I do like taking a little bit or just doing a little bite of this or a little. So I was going to go cold turkey and just have a small list of foods that I was willing to eat to see if diet had anything to do with these migraines. So I did that. And miracle upon miracle, my migraines just completely went away. Absolutely, completely disappeared, probably within a week or two. No meds, no pain, nothing. I just was eating fruits, vegetables, beans, lentils, and nuts. And in those days, it was mostly one ingredient foods. So as I say that list, it sounds really boring. Now I've learned how to eat a lot more adventurous, even if it stays to that list. But at that point, it was just kind of, salads and an apple and a peanut, or some peanuts or something like that. But my pain went away, and that got my attention. So what I tried to do then was to kind of live like that. Now, my grandfather was a vegetarian and really pretty much of a health nut. My father grew up as a vegetarian. I don't think he had meat until after he went off to college. So, and I had tried being a vegetarian before earlier in my life. So restricting things from my diet is less of a problem for me. So suddenly just becoming full-on vegan was helpful. And it wasn't that hard. It was hard if I wanted to eat outside of the home, especially that was in Wisconsin 15 years ago. So that was a challenge. But if I just ate what I bought, and because I don't like to cook anyway, I don't want to be in the kitchen. If I was hungry, I'd go grab an orange. And then if I was hungry later, I'd maybe make a little thing of chili with just some beans and tomatoes and some other roasted veggies, and that would be it. So I was able to do fine, and I had a lot of potatoes. I am a huge potato fan. So then, after the pain was gone for a few months and I'd done this shift in my diet, I sure didn't want to live on that diet. There was a lot of things out there that I was missing. And so I slowly started to add some things back. I think the first thing I added back was meat, because I like meat. I like red meat and pork. I don't like fish. Chicken's okay, but chicken wings are great, but chicken's okay otherwise. But it was the red meat and the pork that I was missing. So I added that back into my diet, and that didn't create any migraines. I tried adding some dairy back in my diet, and that didn't create any migraines. And so just by this slowly adding things back one at a time, I clearly learned that my biggest problem was chemicals. I could not eat processed foods. I could not eat any kind of chemicals. I had been loading up on all sorts of the fake sweeteners, like saccharin and NutraSweet and all of those things. And that would instantly cause pain. So, I had by this point maybe been a couple of months pain-free. And then I think I had a Diet Coke. And oh my gosh, searing pain within like 10 minutes. And then I would think, first I thought it was, it's the Diet Coke. I can't have Diet Coke. But then as time wore on, I figured out it's any kind of chemicals, any kind of fake sweeteners, just terrible for me. So moving forward from that, it was pretty easy to not have chemicals. And what made it really easy was soon I moved to Bend, Oregon. And Bend, Oregon is a very health conscious. People are outside. People are doing activities. They're hiking, they're biking, they're kayaking, they're skiing, they're mountain biking. They're just doing all sorts of things out in the wilderness, outside in Mother Nature, and moving their bodies. And it wasn't weird when I moved here to eat a special diet. So if I went to get tacos with friends and I said, can you make that vegan? They just had a button they pushed on their little cash register that said vegan. Whereas back in Wisconsin, most people didn't even know what that was. I would get all sorts of interesting interpretations once I'd see my food of what people thought vegan was. And so it made it super easy once I moved here to Bend. So I continued to try to stick with that diet as best I could. I cheated, of course. I don't actually know of many vegans who don't have some kind of thing that they cheat with. Somebody I know has clams and she just loves those. Somebody else goes and has, like, I have chicken wings and I'll have a steak dinner every once in a while. But for the most part, most vegans don't do those things. But in Bend, it made it easy. And I started to feel better and better and better. I started to physically look better. My skin was better. My hair and nails were better. My energy level, my body aches were going away. It was just kind of amazing to me how much eating controlled how my body felt. And so now where I am today is, I would say about 90% of my diet is strict. It's vegan, no grain, no sugar, no soy. That's how I say it. But it's basically I eat beans, lentils, nuts, fruits, and veggies. But there are amazing people that are making amazing foods that I can just go buy at the grocery store. Already prepared foods, which is even better, that are super clean and no chemicals and no preservatives and just the way I want to be eating. And then I have my little cheat meals, and it's funny because I tend to have my cheat meals when I'm out with people. So 90% is about maybe once a week. I have something that's naughty. And if I'm on vacation, forget it. It's all off. I just eat however I want to on vacation. But I always tease my friends and family. I'm always surprised they believe me when I tell them what my regular diet is, because they usually don't see that side of me because I'm out and having fun when I'm with them. But when I have people come to the house, especially for a work event, so I have new moon retreats where people come and seep into the healing center that I have here, and they get healing sessions, and we do intuitive coaching, and we just immerse them in 2 to 3 days of just hyper healing. And during that, they eat my way. So I get them vegan nacho cheese, which is cashew based, and we put that on baked potatoes with cashew based butter. And most of the people don't even know the difference between. I've had so many people go and get, they try to source that same nacho cheese, the vegan nacho cheese, when they get back home. And the visitors tend to not only lose weight. I don't really like to tout that because that's not the goal. The goal is to feel better, right? But they feel lighter, they feel better. Their digestive system kicks in just 2 or 3 days. It just makes a huge impact. So hopefully I'm influencing people every now and again. I've also really encouraged a lot of people to watch some amazing documentaries. Arnold Schwarzenegger last year, maybe it's 2 years ago now, just came out with a documentary called Game Changers. And it is all about all sorts of studies of supreme athletes and how their diet impacts. And I'm going to tell you, if you are a man who cares about your sexual performance and your capabilities, watch that show, because it's a very male dominated show. I mean, there's some studies in women, but it's very much focused on male athletes. And you're going to learn some very interesting things in there that might make you want to think before you just eat, cheeseburgers and steaks and things all the time. I think it's shifted over many a man to become vegan. And I suspect it's also got a big impact on women and their sexuality as well. But more important than the sexuality part, it helps people so that they feel good. They have more energy. They can get off medications, hopefully, that they're on. Their body can do more of what they want it to do. And just on and on. So I'm a big believer in seeing all the science out there that backs up what a vegan diet, what a clean diet, doesn't necessarily have to be vegan. There's all sorts of evidence of just clean eating and what it can do. When I went through my 1 month, it was 30 days, 300 hours of training, so it was quite intense. When I went to the shamanic energy medicine classes, there was also a big push there on diet, because what you ingest, what you put in your gut, goes straight to your brain, and that goes then impacts your spiritual connection. So it's that mind, body, spirit connection that's critical. It's also interesting, and I'll talk about it in a later podcast, but brain health is also very strongly impacted by what you ingest. And so the brain fog that I had prior to coming to Bend is just completely disappeared. I am sharp. My memory is better and better. I'm just not only feeling good physically, but I notice those other cognitive skills that are back as well. So it's never too late. It's also never too early to start these things. I just turned 60, and I golf, and I do yoga, and I do dancing. I do partner dancing. I hike about 90 minutes minimum a day, every single day. I ski. I pretty much physically can do whatever I want to. And I really think a lot of it has to do with my diet. My stress level is extremely low. My digestive system, it runs like a champ. Um, and I'm on no medication. I have talked to my doctors, and I clearly intend to never be on any kind of a medication for any chronic illness. I certainly never intend to get a chronic illness, but if some weird thing slips through and I get something, then I am not going to take any medication for it, and instead I will address it through diet. Um, so sometimes I talk about this and people look at me and just kind of check out and get their deer in headlights and just think, oh my gosh, I can't eat only fruits, vegetables, grain, beans, and or beans, lentils, and nuts. But I would suggest that that's not how I started, right? I've been on this, doing this for 15, probably 15 plus years at this point. And it's not something most people can just flip a switch and then do and keep it permanently. But you can take baby steps and maybe note what results you got even from just the baby step. Maybe you decide to cut out dairy, right? Just one thing. Cut out dairy. And then try that for a month and see how your body feels. See how your aches and pains are. See if your vision changes. Just see how you feel. See what shifts. And then if that's good, maybe you want to stay there for a year. Maybe then the next year you want to cut out something else. But I do think it's the slow and the steady and the constant one step forward as best you can. Give yourself some grace when you take your 2 steps back, because you will, and we all do. And if you feel like you have some psychological issues that are in the way versus just letting your tongue rule the roost, right? But often when people have real challenges with their eating, they might have some psychological challenges. And so I would highly recommend, don't give up on yourself. Go out there. Find out what that is. Get it resolved. Try talk therapy if you haven't. But if you've tried talk therapy, try RTT, try hypnosis, try acupuncture. There's so many different things you can try to get to your root problem, so that then you'll find it easier to ingest and nourish your body, rather than letting your tongue, just eat cotton candy all day, which we all know doesn't feel good. So that is my story. That's what I wanted to share with you today on the podcast. And I'm hoping that maybe there's a little bit of inspiration there for you, so that you can kind of maybe meditate on what might be good for you, and if you want to take any kind of baby steps forward, and if you do, what those steps might be. Namaste.